Previously on Film Noir.
Detective Steve here. Who are you, and how the hell did you get this number?
I'm the drama chick, and my magical fan Hachiko hacked your database. I am completely against the misuse of your magical gut powers.
Tyler, we need to fortify our database.
Why?
Fangirls.
Remember when being an internet reviewer involved lore and supernatural stuff?
Ah yes, the good old days. You know, sometimes it's difficult finding new ways to brood before videos, but I gotta say, don't miss the constant danger.
Or being tracked down by fangirls. What happened to Drama Chick, by the way?
I think she got out of the game a few years ago, but she wrote a children's book. I donated to the Kickstarter.
Oh, good for her.
And honestly, that crossover was pretty fun. Remember Jim record that really awesome Hype Man bit for...
I'll get you, my pretties, and your faith in Sam Brady's directing skills too!
Steven!
Tyler, I gotta go. I need to review the Death Note sequel.
What? Why?
Tyler, I don't have time! Jim needs me!
But that doesn't explain anything. This is why there's no lore in my videos.
Death Note is one of my all-time favorite anime, ranking number 4 on my seriously outdated top 10 cartoons list.
I kid you not, there's only 37 episodes.
Oh, only 37! You naive fool. In defense of my younger self, I was measuring Death Note's episode count against stuff like Naruto and Pokemon. Back then, I thought franchise anime were the rule, not the exception. Before now, I've talked about 2 live-action movies based on Death Note. One was produced by Netflix in 2017, while the 2006 Japanese film was a good movie. I covered the latter film back in 2016 in collaboration with the Drama Chick. I don't plan to re-exposit much, so if you haven't seen the first Death Note movie, either go watch it, or go watch my video about it. In the case of that movie's sequel, I'll be working alone this time. And despite her boundary-violating use of magical powers, Drama Chick's presence will be missed. But 5 years is way too long to carry unfinished business. This is Death Note, The Last Name. It starts with an extended scene from the first movie, a visual recap in the opening credits, and a funeral scene reminding us who some of the characters are. This is a lot of rewind for a film that released less than 6 months after its predecessor. In fairness, it's probably helpful to viewers who only know Death Note from having seen the first movie. But if you're anything like me, you might be feeling just a little... Light is brought to the Kira investigation headquarters. This may already seem like a terrible first day at a new job, but buckle up. Not only is public support for Kira growing stronger, but one TV station airs a mysterious tape produced by Misa Amane, now using her own Death Note and calling herself the second Kira. Police trying to disperse the crowd are also targeted. Damn you, second Kira! It was supposed to be Ukita! This reveals to the investigators that this Kira only needs to see a face to kill someone, and tells the audience that Misa has traded half her lifespan for the eyes of a Shinigami, which allow her to see people's names and lifespans. And to top it off, Light's sister Sayu is almost a victim. But instead, her cries of distress trigger Misa's tragic backstory. Chief Yagami, wearing a face-shielding helmet, bursts into Sakura TV and confiscates the tapes. Light heads over to the station to comfort Sayu, but also sees an important opportunity.
Kira?
almost had a Miller Lite joke for this, but turns out that spelling was intentional.
月と書いてライトって読むんだ。
Still, there are enough subtitle mistakes in this movie that you could probably make a decent drinking game out of it. Just be sure to mind your limits, okay? Misa, after way too easily finding Light's home address, reveals herself to him.
友達とそこで会ってちょっと部屋に上がってもらう。
ハッピースイーツの。あ、そうだ、天音ミサだ。
Odd that Light never mentioned being friends with a celebrity, never mind the fact that he's taking her to his room so soon after his last girlfriend's funeral.
なぜわかった？
人間の名前と寿命が見えるんだけど、ノートを持ってると寿命の歯がわからなくなるの。大阪にオカルト好きな友達がいて、その子にインチキな心霊写真見せて、
今その友達はどうしてる？
あなたが殺せと言うなら。
Despite Light's trepidations, Misa is desperate to earn his trust on account of the fact that Kira served justice on the robber who killed her family.
わかった。寿命を半分にした君の目は。
While Misa wants to be useful to Light, her Shinigami, Rem, provides one measure of security.
従えないなら君を殺すまでだよ。
そうはさせないよ。この子の寿命は見えている。お前がこの子を殺そうとしているのを知れば、その前に私がお前を殺す。
Ignoring the fact that Death Note users can't go to hell, this is pretty faithful to the source material and well performed. That said, I've been thinking about this line.
I'm still stronger than he is, because I have the eyes.
And wondering what this story might be like if Light and Misa were on more equal footing.
What am I supposed to do?
Then again, who needs speculation, am I right? Elle shows up on Light's college campus the same day that Misa happens to be paying a visit, and she gets an opportunity to see through his alias. Minus this suspicious line,
たらどうなの？
it's Kira's dream come true. But after a brief moment of chaos,
やだ、誰かがお尻触った。
犯人は名探偵の私が見つけます。どうぞ。
the circumstances change.
別れた途端すぐ電話なんて本当に。天音ミサを第二のキラー容疑で確保しました。
Caught a suspect and sussed out Light in the process. I guess this is actually Elle's dream come true. Misa is confined and interrogated, during which she forfeits ownership of the Death Note. This causes amnesia, making her guilt much harder to prove.
一度気を失って目覚めてからずっとこれ言ってますね。
Then we learn how Misa got her Death Note and why Rem is protecting her.
親を殺されたミサに親のような感情を抱くようになっていたらしい。男の名前をデスノートに書き、ミサの寿命を伸ばしてしまった。ジェラスは死んだ。ミサを見守ってくれと私に言い残して。
Up to this point, Light's been plotting on a smaller scale. His next plan of action, though, is much more long-term and wild. Step 1. Light buries his Death Note, offers to confine himself to prove his innocence, and gives up his notebook ownership.
じゃあな、ライト。
望んだ。でも今はっきり気づいた。これは時間の無駄だよ。
Step 2. Kiyomi Takeda. Kiyomi works at Sakura TV doing most of the research for their coverage on Kira, but isn't getting due credit for it.
報道してきたから、第二のキラーも信頼してうちの局にビデオをよこしたわけじゃないですか。
And even faces disrespect.
セクハラとか騒がないでね。切るか切られるかの真剣勝負なんだから。
But after receiving the Death Note from Rem, she becomes the acting Kira. New victims become her scoops. She starts appearing on TV more, and even becomes an anchor woman when the current one has an accident. They don't show Kiyomi writing her name in the notebook, but it feels heavily implied.
西山紗友子が昨晩、交通事故により亡くなりました。
What you're seeing at this part of the movie is technically source material accurate, but huge liberties are being taken. In order to fit Death Note's story into 2 movies, quite a few characters, subplots, and story arcs were cut, including a group of corporation executives, a second Kira investigation team, and a 4th Shinigami. In this movie, Kiyomi is taking the spot of one of the corporation executives and playing his part, while also repurposing what she did in the source material for different circumstances. The key parts of that role are positive media coverage of Kira and using the Death Note at a time when Light can't.
私がキラのパートナー。
Freaking A, Light! First you give Misa the garbage about needing to date other girls so you can avoid suspicion, and now Kiyomi's getting all starry-eyed. I know you're a sociopath, but damn! In any case, criminals keep dying, so the confinement eventually ends. And then, Light turns out to be a very big help for the investigation.
新しいキラは前のキラに比べてより女性問題に関心を持つようになってるんだ。つまりマスコミで取り扱われるような事件をわずかだが新しいキラはより多く裁くようになってる。ある報道機関によって取り扱われた事件の桜テレビ。
You know, it's delightfully ironic that Light is so good at finding Kira when he doesn't remember that he's Kira.
キャスターが事故して交代して新キャスターに。
Surveillance shows the names of criminals, both dead and not yet dead, written in the Death Note. Kiyomi is also recorded talking to Rem, who can't be seen or heard on camera.
裁きは続けなくちゃいけない。独り言でしょうか。いや、確かに誰かと喋ってるよ。
The team blackmails her with a disguised Matsuda offering to sell her the surveillance tapes, then baits her by having Matsuda appear on TV threatening to unmask Kira.
そう陽介。偽名なのね。レム。 死神なら分かってたんでしょ。
なんかの暗号か。
本物の死神と考えるのが今は
取引よ。
The trap is successful.
ノートに名前を書いて。
名前を書いたら死ぬ。死神のノート。
And Light gets his memories back by touching the Death Note, upon which we get a flashback detailing the full scope of his plan.
このノートをキラを継ぐ者に渡してくれ。
新しいキラにはたどり着けないぞ。
自分の性格と能力を誰よりも知ってるのは僕だよ。
I know I just gave Light props for his skills, but the core of his plan was really just, I'm an amazing detective, I'm sure I'll figure it out. For how meticulous he normally is, he's playing this one kinda fast and loose. Especially the part where he's writing Kiyomi's name on a slip of Death Note paper hidden in his watch while Rem is putting on a distraction. Granted, it's a very big distraction, but all it would take would be for someone's eyes to wander and be like, Oi, Light, you looking at something more important than the literal god of death flying in front of us? After Kiyomi is taken care of, Light's plan is back on track, aided by a fake rule Rem added to the Death Note to mislead the investigation team.
23日間監禁されていた天音は完全に無実ということになる。
死神。このノートに書いてあるルールはすべて。
At first, I rolled my eyes that L asked the million-dollar question right off the bat like that, but it does make sense. First off, the team just found out that Gods of Death and Killer notebooks exist, so a lot about this case needs to be re-examined. Secondly, the former prime suspects singled out this rule, as if to say, wow, look at how innocent I am, which is at least a little suspicious. L didn't become the great detective he is just by going on the internet and calling himself one. Anyway, Light sends Misa to dig up Ryuk's Death Note and get her memories back so she can write down L's name. There's just one minor issue.
ダメだよ。
一度ノートを手放すと死神の目も消える。
もう一回目の取引して。
You know, even if Misa is a murderer and probably deserving of this fate, there's something tragic to the idea that she's halved her lifespan twice to help a guy who barely gives a shit about her.
好きになってもらえるように。
L proposes testing the 13-day rule for authenticity with 2 death row inmates as the test subjects, raising immediate ethical concerns.
変わらず人の命を粗末に考える男だな。
殺される危険を回避できるかもしれません。
Which only lasts for about a minute of screen time.
数の犯罪者が殺されています。
ノートの検証は私の立ち会いのもとにやってもらう。それが条件だ。
More importantly, this scenario was a tipping point in the source material, and also where the movie is about to take a big departure from it.
何らかの理由で天音には通用しなかった。すなわち、天音は第二のキラー。そして今から私は天音にもう一度素顔を晒します。天音は当然私の名前を書く。その瞬間を取り押さえましょう。
また減っている。
どういう意味ですか？
龍崎、君がそこまで命を張るというなら僕も書ける。第二のキラーを現行犯で捕まえよう。
Rem realizes this arrangement has put Misa in immediate danger. Compelled to protect her, Rem writes the names of both Elle and Watari in the notebook.
お前こそ本当の悪魔だ。そんな男をミサは愛している。やはりお前が嫌い。
Their victory apparent, Light and Misa start planning for their new world order.
お父様の名前じゃないライト。
新世界を作るためだ。
お父さんなんだよ。どうして
犠牲にしなきゃならない時もあるだろう。僕はもう後戻りできないんだよ。
Misa said earlier on that she would kill her friend if Light asked her to, so it's not insignificant to see her challenging him on this. Light has written that Soichiro will hand the notebook over to him, then die of a heart attack.
友達になれず残念です。
What?
偽物か。
これが本物。ライト君が知りたかった私の本名です。私はあと20日しか生きられませんが、今。
What you're seeing is the culmination of the fourth-dimensional chess game that Death Note is known for playing, and also a big part of why I got hooked on the show in the first place.
乾いた犯罪者はちゃんと死んだわ。
1日目だけは。それで天音美沙の第2のキラとしての容疑は確定しました。13日ルールも嘘と確定です。
And then we get the emotional angle in Soichiro Yagami. The drama of a father investigating his own son has been simmering for a while and has now reached a boiling point when the revelation of Light's guilt forces a confrontation.
俺は理解してくれるだろう。そう言ったな。残念だが、わずかも理解できない。断じてお前は正義ではない。
A key difference in the source material is that Soichiro dies believing Light is innocent, but this movie forces him to face the harsh reality, particularly in seeing how far Light will go when he's cornered.
見せてやる。ほう。だからこいつらを殺せ。今すぐ全員殺すんだ。ライト。
Light's premeditated plans are pretty good, but his rash actions have a tendency to get him in trouble. No more so than right now.
おいよ。残念だが、俺に頼るようじゃ。
This moment was in the manga, but the anime took a different approach. Now, there's more to it than just that clip, and you could say there's some merits to that interpretation, but I never really understood why the change. A man with twisted morals and a god complex being shown the folly of his actions and made instantly aware of his own mortality? That's the kind of comeuppance Light deserved. If a bit messed up on account of the fact that he is a teenager. Also pretty messed up is his ultimate fate.
言い忘れてたけど、デスノートを使った人間は、死んだ後にあるのは無だ。
And the way he dies in his father's arms. He's defiant till the end, but Light still dies knowing Soichiro is ashamed of what he's done.
分かってくれよ。
The ICPO doesn't believe the supernatural parts of the case, so Kira's death isn't announced to the world. The Death Notes are destroyed, leaving Misa in ignorant bliss for the rest of her shortened life. After some parting words,
というものを知りません。でも、八神さん、あなたは立派な父親だと。
Elle passes away peacefully, as he planned. Then, of course, there's the emotional wreckage left behind. To spare Sayu and Mrs. Yagami the pain, Soichiro told them that Light was killed by Kira, so it hits a sore spot to watch them here.
自分の誕生日なのに優しいんだか。
Which makes it extremely tragic for Soichiro.
キラがいなくなってから。
キラがいた方が良かったと思うか？
そうじゃないよ。だってキラはお兄ちゃん。
ライトは最後までキラと戦ったんだ。
分かってる。
I can only assume he's gonna carry that secret to his grave. I hope he at least gets good therapy. The film ends with Ryuk flying around a building. I I don't understand why Ryuk is hanging around considering Light died a year ago. Is he planning other shenanigans that we just haven't seen yet? Was this the movie's way of sequel begging in case they did really amazingly well at the box office? Which, I mean, we did get a sequel 10 years later. That's a conversation for another day. I forgot to cover this point of curiosity when talking about the first Death Note, so let's talk. Why do these movies use music by the Red Hot Chili Peppers in their end credits?
Did they want to expand their market into Japan? Was the director a fan of theirs? Or was it just convenience that Stadium Arcadium came out a month before the first movie and Warner Brothers just threw random music in there?
Look, I like listening to this band, but their vibe is very chill and easygoing. That's not something that fits the tone of Death Note at all.
I think a band like My Chemical Romance would have been a better choice. They had a contract with Warner Brothers too. Imagine if The Black Parade had just come out earlier in 2006 and it was those songs that played in the credits instead.
I really wish I could peek into that alternate timeline because the emo kids back then would have lost their freaking minds. But I can't do that, and thus...
I'm perplexed.
So that was Death Note: The Last Name. This movie and its predecessor make a lot of deviations from the source material, and that's something most people would call heresy, but I think they make for a pretty good adaptation.
Every piece of information needed to understand the story and present its morally complex nature is included. The performances and plot points do the job they need to, though they don't always come across as strongly as in the anime, which is longer and more artistically distinct. In the case of adapting a manga, anime as a medium of storytelling has a big advantage over feature films. That doesn't make the films bad, just less grand by comparison.
But I think these movies make up for their shortcomings in a big way with how they construct their version of the story.
A criticism I often see against Death Note is that parts of the story not represented in the movies, particularly what happens after L's death, pads out the story to be longer than it needed to. While I don't dislike those parts of the story, the Yotsuba Corporation arc did feel like a detour, and L's successors weren't rivals to Light in quite the same way that L was.
I can't imagine the choice to cut roughly a third of Death Note's story from these movies was an easy one to make, but the results we get show that there might have been some merit to that decision.
Having L triumph against Light, some might say, is what this character deserved. He still dies in this version, but on his own terms, in service of defeating evil.
Peace and purpose.
Then there's Soichiro Yagami, given just enough focus to drive home the tragedy of finding out that the deadliest killer of all time is his own son. This makes the movie's ending an especially bittersweet reflection. Before the Death Note, Light was just a kid who wished for justice in the world.
This pair of films tries to tell the most important parts of Death Note's story while also trying a couple of new things along the way. For the most part, I think that effort was successful.
If I had to choose, the anime is how I think Death Note should be experienced. That said, I appreciate the fact that different takes on the story exist. Except that one. I like the anime for the stylistic presentation and overall execution, but I'm also very impressed at how well the movies condense this story and offer the audience an experience that the anime couldn't. Here's my best analogy for it. These Death Note movies represent how good The Last Airbender could have been if Hollywood had given more than two craps about doing a good job. Even if you'd ultimately still prefer the show, the new version would have been pretty cool. Maybe Netflix will have better luck. Or maybe not. We'll see.
Before we wrap this up, I have one plot hole to discuss, based on a detail that I very nearly overlooked.
In the source material, when Misa is saved by Jealous, his remaining lifespan is transferred to her, which means she could end up living to be much older than any regular human, barring a fatal accident or any other unnatural cause of death.
The live-action movies didn't mention this detail. And here's why that matters.
If Misa had an abnormal amount of years left to live, trading her lifespan for Shinigami eyes is a much less dangerous deal to make, especially considering she did it twice. But if not being murdered just gave Misa a second chance at living a standard human life, then this version of Misa is likely going to die in her 20s.
So the plot hole is this. If it wasn't mentioned, does that bit of lore still apply?
These movies are an adaptation of Death Note, not a follow-up or expansion of it. The intended audience includes people who may not be familiar with the source material. For better or worse, that means that they're only subject to the logic they set for themselves. Since the information about Jealous's lifespan being transferred to Misa wasn't stated in either movie, it can be disregarded. Bear in mind that either way, this wouldn't change what happens in the movie. Just how many years Misa had to trade for Shinigami Eyes, and how long she had left to live by the end of the movie.
You've got the freak.
Jim! Oh my gosh, you're okay. Dude, I am so sorry. Things in life started happening, and living as a lore-based reviewer it started feeling way too stressful to continue dealing with, but I didn't mean to leave you hanging for 5 years like that. That was super
Whoa, detective, slow down. What are you going on about?
That time Demas and I reviewed Oz the Great and Powerful about 5 years back. Remember, his evil twin made you go all Wicked Witch on us?
Oh, that. Yeah. I got better?
Oh. Well, that's good. You doing well otherwise?
Yeah, well, after the whole Oz debacle, I sort of just realized life was too short to be surrounded by movie franchises and video games, and the Flying Monkeys reminded me a ton of my true passion, pro wrestling, so I just sort of changed the channel, I guess.
That sounds pretty nice. I'm happy for you, dude. Listen, sorry to cut and run, but I need a minute to calm down.
No worries, take it easy, detective.
I should check up on Demas at some point.